for bringing me here, as well as, of course, the Memorial Center. It's incredible, and it's especially important that today, in a place like this, we're discussing these types of topics, because we always say never again, but we are the key to never again happening. Right? And so my name is Sam Freed. I'm from Queens, born and raised, 27 years old. Since I was 9 years old, I wanted to join the IDF, and went to high school in the city. I went to Ramaz. Anybody familiar with Ramaz? Yeah. And so my whole life I was saying, okay, I'm going to go to the IDF, and I was training, getting ready, whatever. All my friends are figuring out where they're going to college, or if they're going to go to Israel for the year after finishing high school. And I said to my parents, I'm like, all right, I've been saying this for 12 years, whatever it is. I'm going to the IDF. Let's make it happen. And they're like, you're not going to the IDF. I was like, well, I'm going to the IDF, so like let's figure this out. And they're like, okay, well, we want you to get your college degree first. And after that, if you still have this conviction that you want to go, fine, you can go to the IDF. And so, of course, they figured 4 years would come and go, and I'd have a girlfriend or a job or whatever it is that would stop me. But the last 4 years come and go, still want to go to the IDF. It was still my why. And so I finished college. I went to Baruch, studied finance. And immediately after finishing college, I draft to the IDF. To fulfill my dream, I draft to Tzamchanim, to paratroopers, served in the 890th Battalion, which is an elite unit. And I served in a whole bunch of different places, right? I served in the north, the south, the middle, Judea, Samaria, on the Gaza border, served in a quasi-war in May of 2021, which was Operation Guardian of the Walls. Pretty much Hamas shot 4,500 rockets into Israel with a span of 11 days. And we thought we were going to go into Gaza. We were told we were going into Gaza. We had a whole plan. And we thought that that war was going to be what this war inevitably was. Unfortunately, it wasn't. We ended up doing a whole bunch of work in Judea, Samaria, in places like Jenin, Nablus, Tulkarm, which are places that are very hot in the news. And my company was awarded the most outstanding company for that operation, for the work that we did. It was really a moment for me where I felt like, wow, this is why I'm here. This is why I'm fighting. It wasn't until after my service, and we'll get back to a little bit about my service in a second, but it wasn't until after my service that I realized that you're not serving for your service, right? You're serving Israel for when Israel needs it. It might not be in your service, right? I would say probably 90 to 95% of soldiers don't necessarily do anything so crazy during their IDF service, but it's when you are needed because a war breaks out, in which people are murdering our people again for the a billionth time throughout history, that we have to step up and fight. That's when you're serving the IDF. When you're needed, when the call comes for you to stand up. Foreshadowing to a lot of other things, but we'll get there. So during my service, I served in a whole bunch of different places, but there's one specific place I want to highlight, a place called Masha Erez. Masha Erez is situated geographically where the Mediterranean meets Gaza and Israel, so very much on the water. It's very close to a place called Zikim, which maybe you guys heard about in the news. It's one of the places where the terrorists infiltrated from on October 7th. Unfortunately, every single soldier who was on that base was slaughtered on October 7th. 40 Golani soldiers, and my team was there, I guess, 2 years before to the day. So we were there from June to November of 2021, and obviously October falls within that span. So it was very personal for us. And we'll get a little bit more into that after, but I finished my service, I come back to America, and I begin my life, right? Like any normal person. I already have a college degree. I've already had this crazy experience, and I try to kind of get into what I want to do. Do I want to stay in finance? Do I want to go somewhere else? Whatever. I do some soul searching. Eventually I realized, okay, I want to go into finance. I started working in a bank, and then October 7th happens. And I was in the city by one of my friends, and we were celebrating the holiday, Simchat Torah, and he was also in the army, in the same unit as I. And so he and I were like really trying to figure out how can we get back to Israel. And you know, a lot of people asked me in that moment, why do you have to go back? Right? There were so many thousands of people who were drafting for reserves on October 7th. think it was like 300,000, and Israel was only expecting like 180,000. Insane, right? Supposedly 30,000 people from outside of Israel came back. So people ask me all the time, you're 26, you have a job, you have a girlfriend, you have a life, you don't need to go back. Why'd you go back? My answer is really always twofold. The first reason is that the pain of any Jew anywhere is the pain of every single Jew everywhere, right? And we know that better than anything, sitting right here in this museum. We maybe know, I don't know, just a couple of survivors, or maybe have met just a couple of survivors in our lives, but we have all these museums dedicated to the Holocaust. People we've never met before, not related to necessarily. I'm sure there's a bunch of Spartan here who probably don't have any family that was killed in the Holocaust. Yet, we feel it viscerally. This is our family, this is our people. The same goes with October 7th, right? You probably don't know personally, or maybe you do, but most people by and large do not know personally any hostage that was taken. Okay? Maybe you don't know personally anybody who was at the Nova Festival, or anybody personally who was murdered in their home. But just this concept that Jewish people can once again in history, after the Holocaust, after we always say never again, that once again in history, somebody can come into our homes, drag us out, and murder us, and rape us, and bring us hostage. Again in history? How? How could that happen again? And so for me, it was like, I need to be one of the people fighting on the front lines. If I can, I have to. Right? There's a saying in the army that everybody always says, right? If you can, you have to. It's that simple. I had an opportunity. The second reason I always give is also similar in vein, but a little bit different. Growing up, I always said that I knew that I was meant to do something more important than just living, working, dying, traveling, vacation, whatever. I always said that if I was living in the time of the Maccabees, I would have wanted to be one of the Maccabees. And if I was living in the time of the partisans fighting against the Nazis in World War II, living in the forests, I would have wanted to be one of them. And if I was living in the time of liberating the Jews from the British mandate in Palestine at the time, right, obviously before 1948, all these different groups, I would have wanted to be one of them. So history reached out its hand and said to me, you have this opportunity. How many people can say that they actually fought for the Jewish people? We have thousands of years of history, not many fighting Jews. And so history is giving me this chance to be one of these few fighters. Of course I have to take the opportunity. What am I going to do? I'm going to say no? God is literally saying to me, this is your call. This is your opportunity to be somebody bigger than what you wanted to do in life. You have to take it. And that's something that I think each and every single one of us, and genuinely meaning this is not just Sam Freed speaking, each and every single one of us have this obligation on a daily basis as a Jew. What kind of Jew do I want to be? Do I want to be a fighting Jew? Or do I want to be one of the Jews who just kind of walk around, whatever? I don't want to be a Jew in public, I take my kippah, put it in my pocket. I don't want to be a Jew in public, I take my Magen David necklace, I put it in my shirt. Too scared? No. I would rather be the Jew that is so loud and proud of being Jewish that they're like, wow, okay? Let's not mess with this guy. This guy clearly is proud. But beyond that, think about it in history, right? It's scary, yes. There's a lot of things that go on college campuses. There's a lot of things that go on in high schools. There's a lot of anti-Semitism in the world. Everywhere you go, there's without a doubt, right? We can't argue this. But if you do decide that you're going to take your Magen David necklace off, right? If you do decide you're going to take your visibly Jewish things off, your identity, and throw it to the side, I give you my word, I promise you that this will happen, that there will come another time in history in which they force us to wear our identity, in which they force us to wear yellow stars again, because we chose not to wear it when we could. Think about that. We are taking our identities off and saying, okay, I'm scared, I don't want to be targeted, but they literally forced us to show our identity during the Holocaust. It's a crazy dichotomy, but It's our opportunity to show that we are proud. We're not going back down this road that we went before. Those times are over. Seriously. We will never, ever, ever walk down this path where people are going to demand that we have to either not be Jewish, be Jewish. We are going to do what we want because we are Jews and we are proud. It's that simple. Other than that, I think also, you guys are young. And I understand you guys maybe don't feel anti-Semitism all the time. Maybe you've never felt anti-Semitism in your life. That's very valid, right? I didn't feel anti-Semitism until I went to college, because I went to a Jewish school my whole life growing up. But that doesn't mean that it doesn't exist, just because it doesn't exist in your purview. That doesn't mean that you aren't responsible for taking a stand for the rest of the Jewish people, for the rest of the collective. Because there are people in France, or even in New York, who are suffering anti-Semitism because they have one thing, Jewish blood. It's no different than the Holocaust. Why were we killed? Jewish blood. And Jewish blood is cheap to people. You look at the double standards that are happening in the news, that are happening everywhere. I mean, you could literally, yesterday, right, or 2 days ago, maybe some of you heard in Syria, hundreds of people were just massacred in the street, literally massacred. Not a word from any of these people who are outside saying that we're committing genocide. Not a word from any of them. Because it's Muslim on Muslim, and no Jews, no news, right? It's crazy. People are so quick to blame the Jew. And it's not just Jews collectively, it's you and you and you, because of one thing that we all have in common, Jewish blood. We'll continue down this in a little bit, but I just want to continue with my story. So, October 7th happens. My friends and I are trying to figure out how we can get back to Israel. And we end up having to connect with the consulate. And so we go to the consul and we say to him, listen, we need to get a flight charter to Israel ASAP. And he says, okay, well, the skies are probably going to be closed shortly, and so we don't know if we can get you into Israel. But if you could get me a list in the next 24 hours of 150 soldiers who are looking to get back to serve for the war, I will charter a flight from New York City to Cyprus, and we'll take a boat from Cyprus to Haifa. And so my friend and I say, easy. Within an hour and a half, we made up like 150, 200 names and phone numbers and army IDs, just completely fake people, presented it to the consul, and we're like, we have the list. He's like, whoa, how'd you do that so quick? We're like, ChatGPT or something. No, but he said, fortunately, we're not going to need it. It doesn't look like Hezbollah is going to get involved, and so the skies aren't going to be closed. So it ends up being 5 days after October 7th. I fly back to Israel. I rejoin my team. You can imagine, really just a crazy thing. So I finished the army, I guess it was 2 years before. And I remember the first greeting that I had with one of my teammates, Roy. So he and I were partners during my regular service. And so I remember I get into the tent, I get to base at about 4 a.m. My team had just finished 36 hours in the field. We don't know when exactly we're going into Gaza. We don't know exactly what's going on. But they were all so tired, exhausted, right? 36 hours straight training. And they're not looking to be bothered at all. But I get into the tent and I see Roy. And I jump on him and I wake him up. I'm like, Achi, higati. And he kind of turns around and opens his eyes like, Simcha? By the way, in Israel I didn't go by Sam, I went by my Hebrew name, Simcha. And he's like, Simcha, is that that? Like, Simcha, is that you? I'm like, Kenachi, higati, I'm here. And he gets up and he just starts bawling his eyes out. I'm like, it's good to see you too, dude, but why are you crying? And he says to me, he says, when you finished your service with us, I know you said that you would come, God forbid if there was a need, but I just never thought you actually would. And now here you are, my brother standing before me in a time of war, in the fight of our lives. And we had a very emotional embrace. But that's the thing, right? You have to understand that this story is the story of the Jewish people. People coming together, brothers, separated by continents and oceans. But in a time of need, we come together. In a time of need, we fight not for us, It's not for me. We fight for each other, shoulder to shoulder. It's no different from anyone here but the person sitting next to you right now. In a time of need, we have to be there for each other because nobody will do it for us. I give you my word, nobody will do it for us. It's up to us to fight on our own behalves. And so my team and I, we start in the north thinking maybe there's a delayed fuse, Hezbollah is maybe going to get involved in a little bit. They didn't. So then we get sent down to Judea, Samaria. We start doing a bunch of missions in the Shomron, in places like I mentioned before, in Jenin, in Nablus, in Tulugam, in very difficult, terrorist-dense populations. But we still have this feeling, you know, great, we're doing important missions, we're stopping people who want to commit attacks, but we don't want to be in the north, we don't want to be in the Shomron, we wanted Gaza. Like I said, October 7th was very personal for my team and I. A couple of my friends were actually, teammates were actually at the Nova Festival and survived. A couple of my teammates' friends were murdered. I don't know if you guys have heard the name Maya Regev, Itai Regev, or brother and sister hostages who were released. So Maya was one of my best friends on my team, Idan, it was his ex-girlfriend. And so we had gone out with her during my service. And so it was, we know these people personally. I mean, imagine you go to a party, you guys are in high school or 8th grade or whatever it is, you go to a party with your friends, and every single person you know at that party gets murdered. Just imagine that concept. That is literally what was happening here. And if you look proportionally on what the devastation was on October 7th, it's like the equivalent of, I think, 30 or 40,000 people being killed on 9/11. Think about that. The amount of people killed, 1,200 people killed in Israel. Israel is not a big country, guys. It's very, very small. Every single person in Israel, every single person is one person removed from being impacted by the war. Yes, obviously everybody has family members who are in the IDF, fine. But I'm saying, on October 7th, or a soldier killed in battle, every single person in Israel is one person removed. They know a person personally. It's insane. It's like in Great Neck. If God forbid something happened, all of you would know exactly who it is. Because you know that person personally, or their brother, or their mother, or their grandmother. We're family. Every single person was impacted. And so we ended up getting our number called to go to Gaza. And we started doing work in central Gaza. And then we ended up going to the south. We start off in a place called Sajaya. Then we go to a place called Nitzarim. And then we go to Khan Yunis, which maybe you guys have heard about in the news. Our mission was pretty simple, right? We have 4 objectives. First is to find and get any possible information we can on hostages. Second is find any weaponry that we possibly can, being stashed away, and I'll touch on that in a second. Okay? Third is finding any tunnel systems. And 4 is obviously neutralizing threats. What do I mean by finding weapons? You go into a house, you go into a territory that, by the way, we escorted innocent civilians away from these areas before going in fighting against Hamas. And so we go into an area in which there are no civilians whatsoever, go into a room of a building that we're taking over to check and make sure that there's, clear of any booby traps, or maybe there's information, maybe there's a tunnel that we have to find and destroy. Go into a house, go into a room. It's a baby's room, it's a kid's room. Stickers on the wall, Paw Patrol, and Mickey Mouse just like ours. But you look under their bed, and there's an Uzi and several magazines for a gun strapped under the crib. Or you're in a living room, you're moving things out of the way, right? And you hear something shaking in the couch. You flip the couch over, you tear it open, there's an RPG. Well, I'll give you one better. One of my friends, there's not really many opportunities to go to the bathroom and a toilet, a proper toilet, so we're in a house, my friend is trying to go to the bathroom, and he sees that under the toilet, there's like a cutout. He's like, oh, that's strange. So he moves the toilet, and he sees a box of grenades just sitting under the toilet. This is why we go through every house very, very, very meticulously and very thoroughly to make sure that we don't miss anything. Because these are things that are going to be used against us, literally against us, in the coming days if we don't find them. It's crazy. Granted, I wasn't in every single place in Gaza, but I will tell you, from my experience, that every single house that we went into, every single building that we went into, had something. I'm not saying that means every single Palestinian is guilty. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm saying in the places that I went, every house had something. Whether it was a flag of Hamas, whether it was bandanas of Hamas, whether it was, like I said, RPGs, a box of grenades, or whether it was something as simple as a picture of a shaheed, one of their martyrs, on their refrigerator as a magnet. Every single house had something. So we're obviously operating in a very difficult place, and obviously war is not fun. Because this is in my stint of 27 days straight in Gaza. We were taking over a certain area, and we were setting up shop for the night, right? The way that it works is that you take over a couple of houses, a whole strip, and then you set up a defense position for the night, and then once the sunrise comes, we get up again and we start moving, and continue to taking over the land. We're setting up shop, it's about 7 p.m. There's 3 levels to this building. On the top floor, you have 4 people doing lookout duty, and we all switch. My team and I was a commander of a squadron, so I had 5 guys below me, so there were 2 squadrons in the lower room, 1 floor below, so you have the top floor, middle floor, and then bottom floor is ground level. In the middle floor is where my team and I were, 11 of us, and all of a sudden, we're all kind of just getting ready, changing our scopes from day scopes to night scopes, and just getting our night vision ready for whatever might happen. But we're like really nonchalant, we're just relaxing, we haven't like had any tough combat in the last couple of days, but all of a sudden, I see this massive explosion, hear like this shrika, this scream of an RPG, hits the building, and like a whole plume of smoke comes in to the room that I'm in. We all obviously dive to the ground. 20 seconds after that, another RPG, 20 seconds after that, another RPG, then a grenade, then another RPG, then another RPG, while simultaneously AK-47 fire being strewn across the room. Things you hear shattering, you hear just everybody screaming, nobody really knows exactly what's going on, you don't know if anybody's killed, injured, you have no idea because it's also dark. Chaos, legitimate chaos. And so as a commander and as a sharpshooter, my job is to get to height. Obviously my job is to make sure that my team's okay. So I scream out the names of my teammates, make sure everybody's alive, everybody's okay, fine, cool. I run up to the top floor. We get into a crazy firefight. Thank God we ended up neutralizing a bunch of terrorists, and after about 30 minutes or so, the event is over. Now mind you, a firefight is not fun. Your lives are really very much on the line. You don't know, again, if your friends previously from the first 5 RPGs were killed or injured. Turns out a couple of people were shot, and a couple of people had some shrapnel injuries, nothing serious, thank God. And we all walk out of this thing alive, miraculously. Now, as the daybreak comes, we see the walls of inside the building, and I mean, you just see bullet holes everywhere. Like it's crazy. It does not make sense that nobody was killed in this event. But that's not even the biggest miracle. The biggest miracle of this event was that first RPG that hit the building, made a massive gaping hole right in between that top floor, the defense position, and the middle floor, where my team and I were on, right in between our windows. So say 5 feet above or 5 feet below, you're killing the people up top, or you're killing myself and 10 of my friends. And how do we know this, also, other than seeing it with our own eyes? Hamas put out a video, one of the videos that they were circulating of them attacking IDF soldiers. One of those videos was our team that they attacked in this event, where you see them shooting the first RPG and hitting exactly in the middle. And we were all like, that's insane. You wouldn't even be able to find our bodies, is what I'm trying to tell you. And somehow we are here, and I'm here speaking before you today. And I want you guys to understand something beyond that. Yes, that's one firefight amongst many that we had, amongst many ambushes that Hamas had on us. But what you guys have to understand is that we feel your presence with us every single day in this war. And I know this war has been a very long war. It's coming up on 17 months. And I know that It's very difficult for all of you to feel like you're an active part of this war. But I mean it when I tell you that the difference between me being killed by that RPG and not being killed by that RPG, or the difference between any one of those bullets hitting me and hitting just right by me, is not my merit, it's not my luck. It's between us and the BS. What is it? It's your prayers and it's your thoughts over the 17-month period. If at any time before going to bed, you guys just thought of us, I mean it, that is what is protecting us. You guys are genuinely our guardian angels. I wish I could be saying it in a cliche way. I should not be here today, right? I should be killed 10, 15 times over. But I am here, and it's because of you guys. So, continuing through, we end up finishing our time in Gaza, and after, I guess we finished about February, I get released, my team and I are released, and I come back to the United States. And when I had left the United States, it's a very different United States than when I came back. When I left 5 days after October 7th, there was still immense sympathy. People were still saying what was happening was a terrorist attack. Mind you, the third largest terrorist attack in global history. The first being 9/11, the second being Tikrit, and the third being October 7th. Okay? I come back and I see people tearing down hostage posters. I wasn't privy to all the information of what was going on in America because obviously I was in war. I didn't have my phone when I was in Gaza, and so I went long stretches without knowing anything going on. Then I come back and I'm like, what on God's green earth is going on? And so I say to myself, I just fought on the physical battlefield, but I now have an obligation to fight on the ideological. And so I started speaking. People requested me at that time. Not many soldiers would come back from the war, so people requested me to come speak places. And so I remember I go to Adelphi University, and that was one of my first speeches back. And my mission was really as simple as I want to empower Jews and our allies. I want people to hear the stories. I want people to know the miracles that are happening to us, and that we appreciate all of your prayers. And so I get to Adelphi, and there was this massive social media campaign against me. There were 200 people outside screaming, Sam, Sam, you can't hide, you're committing genocide. All these different crazy things, which I have to give them credit, pretty creative. But all these different things against me, without knowing a single word about what I was supposed to say. Without saying without hearing anything I had to say, because I had never spoken before since the war. They don't know me. They don't know what I'm about. They don't understand that as an IDF soldier, I protected innocent Jews just as much as I protected innocent Muslims, and just as much as I protected innocent Christians, just as much as I protected innocent Palestinians, escorting them to safety, literally at the expense of my own life. And so I go and I speak, and I say to myself, okay, it can't just be about empowering Jews, because there's more here. There's more to this story. And how do I know that? Because there was a professor who was sitting in the front row with a keffiyeh, and I had a couple of bouts back and forth with her about what was going on, and at the end, I say to her, I go up to her and I say, Professor, I really appreciate you being here. It's these very difficult conversations that are instrumental to peace, and even if we don't agree on what is going on, I hope we can agree that in the end of the day, we need peace for both of our people, and we need to empathize and sympathize and humanize both people for there to be a reasonable and legitimate future for both of us. And I put out my hand to shake her hand, and she says, I will never shake hands with a Zionist. I said, shame on you. You're a professor at a university. You hear me saying that I'm here to speak about peace for your people. And you can have the gall and nerve to say that you won't shake my hand? How do you think peace is going to happen? And she said, I don't care, I won't be with you. And I said, all right. So it can't just be about empowering Jews. It also has to be about having a dialogue for peace. My second thing. And so I started going around to different universities and going to the encampments and going to mosques and shuls and churches and schools, high schools, workshops, debates, rallies, all these different things in an effort to have productive dialogue. How do you guys think that went for me? Not great. These people, as you guys can probably tell, and as you see on social media all the time, these people generally do not want to have a discussion. So I try to employ a bunch of different tactics, but I find something else. Why don't they want to have a discussion with me? Because they immediately don't trust me when I say that I'm from the IDF, right? These 3 letters to them is like a slur. It's like I'm immediately not credible. But it's actually my being in the IDF that provides me my credibility, right? That I can say, yes, I fought in Gaza. Yes, I fought against Hamas. Yes, I fought in this war. But in the same breath, I can still say, I care about Palestinians. In the same breath, I can still say, I want peace. And it specifically has to come from somebody like me, who is part of the war, who was in Gaza, who was fighting, and who saw these bad things. It has to come from somebody like me, but yet they don't want to have the conversation about it. So my third tenet was humanizing the idea. So I go around, I have some really crazy experiences. One experience I want to share with you guys was in Boise, Idaho. Boise, Idaho, most of you probably will never go there in your entire lives. Probably not missing much. But I go to Boise with the same expectation, and I go to speak at a church. It was supposed to be this big interfaith event, and it was going to be like 700 people. And while I'm at the event, I get a phone call. Obviously, I couldn't check my phone at the time, but I get a phone call from the police department. And after my speech, thank God it went well, it was really amazing, despite protesters outside. I check my phone, I have a voicemail from the Boise Police Department. They say, give us a call when you get a chance. Call them back, like, hello, I just got a call from Sergeant da-da-da. What's going on, how can I help you? They're like, this is Sam Freed. I'm like, yeah. They're like, are you staying at the Hilton? I was like, yeah. They're like, get here ASAP. I'm like, okay, what did I do? And did I do something wrong? He's like, well, get here, get here and we'll talk. Okay, so I book it to the hotel that I was staying at, and closed off. There's a whole bunch of cop cars. I'm like, this is like a legitimate crime scene. What in God's green earth did I do? This is scary. And so I get there and I say to the sergeant, I'm like, listen, I was told to come here. He's like, you're Sam Freed. I'm like, yeah, I'm Sam Freed. What is going on? He's like, look, 4 people wearing keffiyehs and had hammers and wrenches came to the hotel to try and lynch me. And I was like, I wasn't there? Damn. No, I'm kidding. I didn't say that. But I was like, wow, that's honestly pretty crazy. And they had caught 2 of them. 2 of them were still on the loose, but they did $15,000 worth of damage to the hotel for allowing an IDF soldier to stay there. What did they do? They broke windows, they spray painted Sam Freed is committing genocide, like all these different things, put up pictures of my face with X's on it all over the hotel. This is a Hilton. This is not like a random motel. This is like a legitimate hotel. And I said to myself, I was like, it's so crazy that these people will literally do crimes before getting to have a conversation, before coming to the table and speaking. And it's so important for us and you guys, truly, to understand that we are not like them, right? We cannot be like them. They're going to say Intifada revolution, they're going to say death to Israel, they're going to say death to the Jews. We cannot be like them. We do not say death to the Arabs. We do not say death to the Palestinians. We can say we will obliterate Hamas from the face of the world because they are a legitimate terrorist organization whose goal and charter is to kill every single last Jew. But we will not kill Palestinians, stop them, because we just don't like them. That's their job. They hate us, we give it back with love. Right? Their baseless hate is not going to make us baselessly hate. We can't do that. We have to be better, we have to be bigger, we have to lead by example. And that's really important for each and every single one of you, because you're going to get into these conversations with people who say crazy stuff. They're going to say we're baby killers, they're going to say you support baby killers, they're going to say that you guys are committing a genocide, they're going to say that you guys are doing apartheid, ethnic cleansing, they're going to say all these buzzwords. What your job is to respond appropriately, respond with demeanor and composure, to not scream, to not curse, to not be like them. But even more than that, and maybe the #1 trick I've had in all my successful speeches, my successful debates with people, I guess there's two things. One is you will never win in a speech or debate or whatever it is when there is a big crowd of people around. Because that is not the time to start speaking about peace to somebody who is very clearly not interested in having peace. There's a bunch of people around, there's pressure, this person expects that he wants to make a show or she wants to make a show. Take somebody to the side and have a proper conversation if you think that this person is a viable person to have a conversation with. That's one. Two, is that if you are in a situation where you are with a lot of people, right, and you guys are having a big debate, and there's 20 people around, and you're not getting anywhere with this person, you have to understand you are not speaking to the person who's in front of you who's screaming and cursing. Maybe you're speaking to them, but you're speaking literally to the 20 people around who are listening to what you, defending Israel and defending the Jewish people, have to say. When they say you're committing genocide, it's your response, whether it's bringing up the casualty figures and saying, okay, well, first of all, define a genocide, right? It's an intentional desire to destroy a group of people. Intentional. That's the operative word there, right? What Israel has done is shown anything other than intent to destroy a whole group of people. We have brought more aid into Gaza, over 2 billion pounds of aid, 2 billion pounds of aid into Gaza since the beginning of the war. Tell me another time in history that somebody has done that for the enemy civilians. We drop leaflets before we bomb buildings. We hack into radios to tell people where to go so they don't get caught in the crosshairs. We escort, like I did, escort civilians to safety. If somebody's saying we're trying to commit a genocide, we have done an absolutely horrible job of doing so. Given the fact that we are the 8th strongest military in the world, and it's 17 months in the war, considering, I think, back in, I think it was May, we hit the 40,000 figure. We're now in, what's this month? We're in March now, of the next year, and there's only been 8,000 more people killed. Yes, there are innocent people who have been killed in this war, and we have to acknowledge that. But find me another war in the world in which no innocent people died. Such is the nature of war. War is terrible. We did not start this war. We did not want this war. Hamas wanted this war. Hamas said, okay, we're going to put the lives of our innocent people to the side because we'd rather kill Jews than protect our constituents. So one of the biggest things that I think you guys have to understand when we have these conversations is, where can we apply the accountability? Because Israel has done all these things to try and save lives, while Hamas has done all these things to try and destroy lives. Right? And then you'll have all these questions about whether it's apartheid, right? Let's just say apartheid, for instance. Okay, well, define apartheid. Well, okay, Arabs and Jews don't have equal rights in Israel. Well, that's not true at all. 20% of the Israeli population is Arab. And they have more educational, political, social, financial, sexual rights in Israel than they have anywhere else in the entire Middle East. So, like, what are we talking about? One of the biggest things that you guys can do in these conversations is to ask the question back to them. Explain what you're saying. Like, if they make an accusation, call them out. Say, well, can you source that? Or explain what you mean. And then they just don't know what they're going to say, because they just say this classic thing that they hear from CNN or the New York Times or Al Jazeera or whatever. I want to digress and move on to something else, and then we can get to Q&A if we want. And I really want to make this very clear for all of you. This fight is really, really, really important. But you guys also have to understand that you don't have to be an IDF soldier fighting in Gaza. You don't have to be an IDF soldier fighting in Gaza, nor do you have to be an advocate fighting on social media and going around the country like I do in order to fight for the Jews. You guys don't have to do any of those things. You guys don't have to be Miss Israel. You guys don't have to do all the stuff that you see from people like Shabbos Kestenbaum or me or any of these people. All you have to do is find your fight. Find what you personally can do. Because I promise you, every single person here can do something. It doesn't have to be big. I promise you it doesn't have to be big. It's as simple as saying, okay, I'm going to wear my Jewish star out because I'm proud. Or I'm going to have a conversation with somebody in school who I think doesn't get it but might be interested in understanding. Or maybe it means getting closer to your Judaism, getting closer to your identity, keeping Shabbat, lighting Shabbat candles, turning off your phone Friday night. I don't care what it is. Maybe it's donating $1 to tzedakah, to charity. Whatever it is, find the thing that you can do, because you have an obligation to be a part of this fight. Like I said in the beginning, I am no more part of this fight than any of you are. Yes, I fought in the war, but I'm also just one Jew. We have 50 people here who are also just individually one Jew, but collectively, we're all in this together. I mean it, we're all in this together. Most of all, you have to understand why we're fighting this fight. And I'll end with this. We are not fighting this fight for Israel. We're not fighting this fight for me. We're not fighting this fight for any of you here today, actually. Why are we fighting this fight? Because for the thousands of years of our history, thousands of years, Jews were rounded up, Jews were brought to gas chambers, Jews were brought to crematorium, they were brought to the gallows, they had to watch as their shuls and synagogues were burnt in flames in front of them. They were tormented and tortured and raped and pillaged. And in their last moments of their lives, they looked up and begged God for a future in which some Jew would be able to fight on their behalf. We are in this fight not for us, but for them. We owe it to them because they never got a chance to fight. And it is for them that we will fight. And it is for them that we will continue to fight. We owe it to them. And you owe it to yourselves. Be a fighter. Always fight, because like I said, it will not be done for us. You guys have to do it. The last thing I'll say is, my rabbi said to me before I left for the war, he said as follows. He said, Sam, war is one of the worst things in the entire world, but it isn't the worst thing. The worst thing in the entire world would be living our entire lives without ever finding anything worth fighting for. Being Jewish, being proud, being at a Holocaust museum. This is worth fighting for. Our history is worth fighting for. The continuity of our people is worth fighting for. And it doesn't end with us, it doesn't start with us, but I give you my word, it will continue with us. And if we do not do our best now to fight, it will only get worse for your children. You guys are young, but you guys are the next leaders. I promise you that in 20 years from now, you guys will be the people leading the country. I put my life on the line in order for them to survive. I don't think all Palestinians are pro-Hamas. There is, however, there was a study that came out by the Palestinian Center for Surveys and Research back in, I think it was January 24, that said that 73% of the people who they surveyed, which was like about 1,500 people, supported what Hamas did on October 7th. Look, I think, and I guess I'm going away from your question, I'll get to it in a second, but I think it's very important that we understand that even if there are a lot of Palestinians who may support what Hamas did, that does not mean that we could just discount their lives and say, okay, we just killed them. That's not how this works. Okay, we have to hold ourselves to a higher standard, and we have to go on a person-by-person basis, not a collective. To your question, I would say the top 5 things, and I would say probably most questions that are going to be, or accusations, are going to fall into very specific buckets, right? It's going to be the genocide bucket, right? It's going to be the you're murdering innocent children bucket. It's going to be the apartheid bucket. It's going to be the ethnic cleansing bucket. It's going to be like those kinds of open-air prison bucket. It's like those things, and you could almost always like filter any question that anybody asks into one of those, right? And so if you're being asked, let's just say about, I don't know, about genocide, right? There's so many different things that you could say. I think a really important thing is looking at like just the numbers. The civilian to combatant death ratio in this war is lower than any other war in the history of the world for modern urban warfare. I mean, the UN, everybody should ideally trust the United Nations. The United Nations says that the average in modern urban war for civilian to combatant death is 9-1, right? These people lob these double standards at us and expect that Jews are just A, always wrong, or always in the wrong, but B, that they're only going to get mad at things. They have this like tragedy selectivism, in which they're only mad when Jews are involved. Like I said, literally a couple of days ago, hundreds of Syrians were slaughtered. Crickets. Crickets, not one protest. All these people at Columbia University, where are they? Children are being murdered in their homes. Nobody. What about the people in China right now? The Uyghur Muslims. There's like 1.2 or 1.5 million Uyghur Muslims in Chinese internment camps, being raped and slaughtered and whatever, tortured. Not a word. And so it's like, okay, well, are you a hypocrite or are you just anti-Semite? Because in the best case, you're one of those, and in the worst case, they're both, right? We have to care about what we think. I hold myself to a higher standard, and a higher moral standard as an IDF soldier, period. Stop. That has nothing to do with what anybody else thinks about us. Whether we're good or bad, I know who I am, and you know who you are. And we say that we are the most musali, we are the most ethical people, because we are empirically the most ethical people. We hold that standard for our own sake, not for theirs. And I look around, and while I'm speaking, I notice all these people, or not everybody, but a lot of people are wearing Magenta necklaces. So Christians. And then at the end of the service, they do the American national anthem. And then, because I was there, the pastor says, I want to do something else today in honor of Sam being here and fighting for not just the Jewish people, but for Christians and for civility and for democracy. I also want to sing the Jewish national anthem, Atikva. And so he gets up and he sings in Hebrew, this Christian pastor, Hatikva. A Christian pastor in a church singing Hatikva. My point about saying this story is that, yes, you're right. The silent majority it's very difficult. And we don't always see the people who are by our side. We don't always see these people who are looking out for us, who love us, who care about us. But I give you my word that they're there. I give you my word. I've seen it with my own eyes. I'm in the rural, middle of nowhere, Ohio. And you have 1,200 people crying while the pastor is singing our national anthem. I also want to point something out specifically about our national anthem. It's called Hatikva, the hope. What does that even mean, right? What is the hope? We have Israel now. What is this idea of hope? The hope is us. It is you and I. That we will continue the generation going forward. What does that mean? What are we even fighting for? Why is Israel so important to us? And it's literally the answer to your question. Why is Israel so important? Why is everybody out for this small piece of land? It's because somehow this tiny group of people, us, who have never been more than 20 million people in the history of history, somehow we have achieved more. Somehow we are looked at as the most ethical people, as the people, the light amongst the nations. Somehow all these people are jealous of these people who get murdered and murdered and murdered again. Why are they jealous? Because they know that there is no other people who matches what we do, what we have provided to this world. We are such a small fragment of the population of the world, and yet almost every single religion today is based off of our code of ethics. Do not kill. Do not steal. Do not do idolatry. Do not do adultery. These things are our tenets that we've given to the world. We have to uphold those tenets. We have to uphold that morality, otherwise the entire world will literally just fall into an abyss. We are the pillar in which the entire world stands. And if we give way and say that we are going to be the monsters who perpetuate those crimes against us, then Israel does not deserve to exist. Because Israel is the foundation of all of those pillars, of all of those tenets. We have to uphold them. That is what holds us together. It's our obligation to do that.